It has been 13 years since we have gotten a mainline Elder Scrolls game. It has been 10 years since we've gotten a Grand Theft Auto. It's also been 9 years since Fallout 4, and it's been 9 years since The Witcher 3. There has never been a time where AAA games take this long to develop. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's only going to get worse from here. Now, this isn't the first time that people have brought this up before. This has been discussed to some degree by gamers, but the Nintendo president, Shuntaro Furukawa, he was actually having a Q&A session with investors recently, and during this it was actually brought up, this longevity of game development nowadays. Now keep in mind, this is Nintendo. All of those big AAA titles that I mentioned at the start of this video are not developed by Nintendo, and in fact Nintendo, well, they're not necessarily known for their long development times when compared to other big AAA companies nowadays. So that should really emphasize the struggle of game development time nowadays, when the Nintendo president commented that video game development going forward is only going to take longer and is just going to be a much more complex process in the future. Yeah, not exactly comforting words from Nintendo's president, but I have to say I respect them for being real about it, because yeah, if you look at the statistics, if you look at how long games take to be developed nowadays, let's just face it, this is the future. The trajectory going forward is only looking like it's going to take even longer and longer to develop these games. Now, like I said, Nintendo doesn't have a track record of having long development times. Breath of the Wild was released in 2017, and then Tears of the Kingdom was followed up in 2023. So, yeah, the most recent Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, that took 6 years to develop. But yeah, it's looking like it's just going to get even longer and more complex. Now, something he also talked about is the solution to these long game development times. Now, according to him, this solution involves more acquisitions and more mergers with other companies. Yeah, kind of weird, but basically, he's saying that this could increase their resources for development and would basically give them that much more of an investment on these resources. I assume this would be both in actual number of employees working on projects and acquiring different tools, different software, different resources for developing these projects. He didn't mention AI, but the first thing that comes to my mind when big companies say this is AI. Yeah, AI is something that big game development companies have talked about as something that could be a means to an end to reduce game development time. And I don't know exactly where I stand on that, because while this is true, I could also see it just being a reason that companies would then cut costs by just cutting out employees, so that you'd basically have the same game development time that we have right now, but just with less of a cost. So yeah, it was very cool to hear the Nintendo president, actually be real about this. I don't know if mergers and acquisitions are things that can really stop this trend from continuing. I think it could help in the short term, but in the long term, I don't know. I have to agree that game development time is just going to get longer and longer and longer. I know you hate to hear it. Everybody's been pulling their hair out, waiting for GTA, Fallout 5, Elder Scrolls 6, all of that. I don't know, what was once a landscape where you only had to wait like 3 years for the next Halo or Gears of War, well, now it just takes like 12 years to develop a AAA game. But the good thing I will say is that, hey, this means that there has never been a better time for indie games to shine. Low budget games, 2D pixelized type games, those are especially what I am thinking of for the games that could really shine. You could pump those out, put actual effort into making them really good, and it wouldn't have to take, 10 years to develop each title. Yeah, I know we've been waiting on Hollow Knight Silksong for like 7 years now from Team Cherry, but I don't know, maybe that's kind of a significant outlier. Hollow Knight really popped off recently. I'm sure Team Cherry has really been expanding their team recently. They've probably been putting a lot more into the sequel than they did the first game. So yeah, I don't know. I just think indie games, this is their spotlight. This is their time to shine. Because yeah, while AAA titles are still very popular, while, Fallout and Elder Scrolls and Grand Theft Auto still have highly anticipated sequels, people are gonna get tired of waiting what could eventually be like 20 years between each and every game. People have patience, but there is definitely a limit.